So this suggests that the negotiations aren't going very well, unless this is some last-ditch effort at strengthening America's hand at the negotiating table. But overall, I think no, it's a good indication that things aren't going well, and it's unclear also what the strategy here is of Trump. As you said, this came a bit out of nowhere. Why exactly now? Why was it so urgent? And it's not as if this is just a brilliant plan he came up with. If it was this simple, send warships into the Strait of Hormuz and hope that Iran won't dare to attack them, they would have done this already. This is, again, I'm not sure what they're looking for. To be honest, yesterday when I heard about this mission, I thought that they were going to look for a way of, that they've been putting the pieces in place in the region, building up, preparing for another war. And I thought that this might be an effort to, a PR effort to make sure that the Iranians won't be seen as the victim this time, the ones that were attacked in a surprise attack. Instead, they can portray it as the Iranians who was restarting hostilities. So I thought that could be a purpose. But again, that theory would has a big hole in it if the US is now arguing that Iran never actually attacked their warship. So, because that would have been an opportune moment. So again, it's very hard to read this. As I said before, every side is lying so much, and it's not just the American side, Iranian side, but the media as well. So it's the age of narratives, not facts. So it's very hard to follow what's actually happening.
There's another piece of news that came as well just now. A crude oil tanker operated by ADNOC, which is a large UAE company, was hit by 2 Iranian drones off the coast of Oman. So ADNOC is a logistics service, and they've issued the official statement. The attack happened at May 4th at 5:31 a.m. CDT, confirming the drone strikes off the coast of Oman near the Strait of Hormuz exit area. The vessel was in ballast, empty, no cargo, with no injuries or environmental damage reported. So that could be a warning shot. Let me see what time that is in Iranian time. So is 2:31 p.m. So it's just an hour ago, less than an hour ago. That was it. So that's more. It seems. Go ahead. That seems like just a warning shot from Iran.
Yeah, I was going to say that's the perfect description of it then, a warning shot. Because if you're sitting in Iran, the Americans have announced they're going to send their navy through the Strait of Hormuz. You would like to, you want to uphold this blockade. You want to prevent them from going through, but you don't want to spark a major war. What you want to do then is a warning shot. So show that you're ready to fire. So you shoot something, hit something else as opposed to the U.S. Navy, just to make sure that you send the signal to the Americans that this is that they will fire upon them, and hope that the U.S. doesn't actually carry out what they're planning to do. So I think a warning shot is a good way this can be interpreted, because at the moment this is a game of chicken. They're both heading straight forward, and which side is going to swirl first? Either the Americans do not send their ships through, or Iran doesn't actually fire upon them. So I think that this, as you said, could be a warning shot to prove that they are prepared to go to war if the U.S. is trying to force open the Strait of Hormuz.
I have another question for you. There's 2 options right here. One of them is that the U.S. is trying to obviously probe Iran, as we've just talked about. And then the other one is, as also you've said, is that this is the U.S. looking for justification to restart the war, but not make Iran seem like the victim, because that's how Iran seems to a lot of people around the world, is they've been the victim of this war of aggression by the U.S. Obviously, not everyone sees it that way. Other people, especially people in the U.S., see it as Iran's been, has declared war on the U.S. for decades ago. It was with Senator Ron Johnson, and his arguments like, Mario, we're just continuing a war that started 40 years ago, since the 1979 revolution. Obviously, I don't agree with that argument. How can you determine which one is more likely, on whether this is the U.S. probing or whether this is the U.S. looking for justification for war? For me, I look at the rhetoric, and like things like the U.S. denying this could be an indicator. If the U.S. is looking for escalating this into a war, they wouldn't deny the Iranian claim. If anything, they'd be criticizing the Iran for condemning Iran for the attack, saying they'll respond militarily. So assuming that the claim by Iran is true, even if it's not true, if the U.S. is looking for justification, Iran just gave it to them. So that's why I'm leaning more that this the US probing, but I also don't know what the point of probing is, Glenn, because Iran has made it clear what their response will be. They immediately after the announcement of Operation Freedom, the Iranian command center put out a statement saying the following: any American interference in the new maritime regime of the Strait of Hormuz will be considered a violation of the ceasefire. The Strait of Hormuz and the Persian Gulf would not be managed by Trump's delusional posts. No one would believe blame game scenarios. That was made literally within the hour of the announcement by Trump of the Operation Freedom. So if Iran's made their position very clear, what is the point of probing?
Honestly, I think it's desperation at this point. The United States locked itself in a very dangerous and difficult position. They can't sustain a long war against Iran. I think that's proven. There's strong evidence for this in terms of how much of their weaponry they have depleted, their missiles and in their intercepted missiles. They can't really continue this war, and essentially they thought if they just destroy, hit their military capabilities, then the Iranians would have to fold, but they can't get all of their military assets. And then they thought if you kill their leadership, the government might collapse. This didn't work. So then now the last option has essentially been to just bring a lot of pain to the civilian population and hope that the Iranians would eventually bow if the US can deliver a powerful blow and enough pain. But here's the thing, this is an existential threat for Iran. I think they would have to, they would eat dirt if they have to, because there is no other alternatives for them. This is not the United States looking for policy changes in Iran. They're looking to not just destroy the government, but even destroying the country, balkanizing it, turning it into another Syria. So they will have to absorb any pain the US comes with, and this is why the US is stuck. They can't defeat the Iranians, and they can't claim victory and go home, because if the Iranians hold the Strait of Hormuz, that's it. Then they can set up a toll booth. They can demand payments in non-dollar currencies. They can get the reparations. So they can pressure the Gulf states to expel American bases. A lot of power shifts towards Iran if the US goes home, irrespective of what Trump puts out on his social media posts. So I think, again, given that this desperation, the probing is, I think it's just doing some slow salami tactics. Again, when the US was in a difficult spot, they had to put an end to the high-intensity war because they were running out of missiles. They agreed to all the 10-point plan of Iran as a point of departure for the talks. And as soon as this had been agreed and the guns fell silent, they slowly walked away from this whole thing. They began to challenge, Israel surely can bomb Lebanon, and they begin to challenge all this thing. Then they start to gradually try to contest Iran's control over Hormuz, and I think they're just trying to reshape the battlefield in a favorable way. But I don't think it's going to work, as you said, which is why this is an act of desperation.
There's another piece of information that just came out now. The IRGC never claimed, so my team just sent me this. The IRGC never claimed the missile struck the US Navy vessel. The statement by Iran's army literally says they fired 2 warning shots towards the ship. So Iranian media is saying they struck the ship. They're saying they fired 2 warning shots, but cannot comment whether there was any damage. CENTCOM, in an attempt to save face, is twisting the narrative, making it look like Iran exaggerated or lied, whereas Iran never made the claim to begin with. CENTCOM also deliberately did not state that the vessel came under fire. They also denied being struck. So this is very important, very, very important point. Iran is saying that we fired 2 warning shots now. So the media outlet said something different. They fired 2 warning shots, and CENTCOM didn't say there was no 2 warning shots fired. They said the ship was not struck. So that's both sides looking not to escalate. So that just came in now. I'm asking for the team will not post
information war. It's it's as valuable as bullets and missiles. Who can control the narrative? But no, it's interesting. It's hard to say how this affects.
Statement. CENTCOM's claim. Iranian media claims the IRGC corps hit a U.S. warship. Truth: no U.S. Navy ships have been struck. So that's what CENTCOM just said. No, none have been struck. So yeah, for me, it just makes it clear. I think Iran did fire against sent against U.S. Navy ships, but they did not strike them. And I'm not sure whether the U.S. Navy responded, but they probably would have responded militarily.
Yeah, so yeah, I guess it still lands at a warning shot then, but it's well, again, some of the same conclusions can be met though with this new information, which is that hopefully neither side wants to return back to all-out war, because again, I think both sides have a lot to lose. I think the problem though is that the time is not on America's side on this one. So then this is why they're quite desperate. So again, the day it's still early. I mean, in Iran now it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So this is the day the United States is supposed to break open the Strait of Hormuz. They might not, they might postpone it. I'm not. It's very hard to predict how this day is going to play out, because with the two sides stuck in such all or nothing scenario, with both sides having so much to lose and gain, and the heavy information war, it can be a very chaotic day ahead of us.
If this war restarts, do you expect it to be more limited than the war we've seen so far? Or will it be gloves off, especially on the Iranian side? We know what their warnings are. I mean, you have talked about it, striking the energy infrastructure in the region, destroying the undersea cables. But do you think they'll go through an escalation ladder first? Or do you think this time around their tolerance for any strikes on Iranian territory would be very different to what it was before?
Well, it could go both ways. I suspect that there would be immediate rapid escalation, simply because what is the purpose now of the United States to actually go back to fighting Iran? There's no other great military targets they could hit. The Americans have already made this point, and they can't sustain a long war. So if the Americans are going into this war, they're going to come in very heavy and go after a lot of civilian infrastructure. So I think if this is the case, the Iranians will respond in kind, in which there would be a very rapid escalation. Also, last time, before the ceasefire, we saw that the Iranians also, could hope that the United States would then essentially say, okay, enough is enough. Let's sit down. We'll agree to the 10-point plan of the Iranians and find some peace. But again, if they already achieved this, but the Americans choose to go back to war either way, then there's no more diplomatic pathway. And I think at this point, there's no reason to hold back. So I think both sides would have a strong incentive to go up that escalation ladder fairly quick. But again, I don't think anything is written in stone yet. It depends how the United States would like to do this. I think their main goal is to restore some kind of an escalation dominance, where they can escalate a little bit, not too much, while on the Iranian side, their main interest is in denying the US to be allowed to control how this war is fought.